Are there any other votes? Announce the results.
Ayes 109, noes 7.
The bill is passed. Mr. Morelli.
Yes, thank you, sir. Let me call out the next 5 bills that I'd like us to take up in this order. Rules Report 180 on page 10 of the main calendar by Ms. Paulin, followed by Rules Report 285 on page 13 by Ms. Gunther. We'll follow that with Rules Report 109 on page 7 by Mr. Scartatos. After that, I'd like to take up Rules Report 118 by Mr. Bronson on page 7. And we'll finish this group with Rules Report 296 on page 13, also by Mr. Bronson.
Clerk will read.
Assembly 9186B, Rules Report 180, Ms. Paulin. An act to amend the general business law.
An explanation is requested, Ms. Paulin.
This bill would prohibit the sale of crib pads and prohibit the use of crib bumper pads in child care facilities and places of public accommodation. Crib bumpers have been associated with infant deaths and injuries. This bill would ensure infants are not exposed to this unnecessary danger.
Mr. Palumbo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the sponsor yield for a few quick questions, please?
Ms. Paulin, will you yield?
Be happy to.
She is happy to, Mr. Palumbo.
Thank you, Amy. I just have a few areas. We've received some concerns and a little bit of opposition. Obviously, not for the obvious reasons, of course. We're quite concerned about our most vulnerable of citizens, our infant children. Just initially, regarding mesh liners, could you explain to us what is meant by that? The mesh liners, could pads be within a fixed mesh liner? Could you just expound on that, please?
You mean the exemption?
Yes, the exemption that you can still have in the crib.
Although it's been a while, my understanding is that these are that they're essentially flush with the bars in a crib, and that they're mesh, so that there's air. Because one of the problems with the crib bumpers is that the kids suffocate because they can't breathe when they get tangled in them. So the mesh has air ability for the baby if they get close to them or tangled in them, that they could still breathe through them.
Sure. So would this allow mesh bumpers, which could be separate from the actual crib itself, that could be fastened?
No, it would be fastened, I guess, in the same place as you would think of as a traditional bumper, but it would be mesh instead of a pad.
An opaque type material, I guess?
Exactly.
So there's some ventilation. I got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, could you explain, or is it accurate to state that the genesis of this bill was the result of some published articles and peer reviews that indicated a Consumer Product Safety Commission study that was done by an individual, Rutherford Thatch? Was that really the genesis of this bill?
No, the genesis of the bill is from the New York State Safe Sleep Coalition and from the Pediatric Association, both on the national level and state level, that advocate that a baby should be in a crib without anything in it, and so they're the ones who are the genesis of the bill.
Understood, because this it looks as though this gained some national attention in 2007, and then Chicago ultimately banned bumper pads in September 2011, as well as the state of Maryland in June 2013. And have you seen any additional documents in that regard regarding some further evaluation of those studies, or some further reviews regarding makeshift pads or anything along those lines?
I think there's been ongoing articles since that review came out. I know that it was refuted a couple of years later, and then a few years after that, the refute was refuted. And the last thing that I saw was just this year, and the project manager I'm going to find the name so that I don't misspeak. The project manager and the lead author of the infant suffocation project for the community project safety, which originally refuted it, said in 2016 that although the manufacturers voluntarily set guidelines to make bumpers thinner, 3 babies have died since that time, even when their crib had the less bulky kind. So that the last set of data and information we have is that despite the manufacturer's claim that the crib bumpers are up to a standard, we're still seeing babies suffocate.
And of course, one baby is too many, let alone 3. And
I'm sorry?
I guess one baby's too many, without a doubt, so,
One
let
baby
alone
is too
3.
many.
Certainly, and I'm sure we're all obviously quite concerned about that. But I appreciate your comments. And on the bill, please, Mr. Speaker.
On the bill, sir.
Thank you. And now, as I said, obviously, these are our most vulnerable of citizens, so we're all quite concerned about this, and I will be supporting this bill because we need to err on the side of caution. The wrinkle is this, and this is something that I think we need to consider very clearly, is the United States Consumer Product Safety Commission actually reported on the initial article from Thack and Harris, Deaths and Injuries Attributed to Infant Crib Bumper Pads, published in the Journal of Pediatrics in 2007, and that was the genesis of the Chicago bills and the Maryland bill. But ultimately, that article was based upon data that they received from the Consumer Product Safety Commission website. They ultimately did, and they don't have a dog in the fight, I don't believe, necessarily for or behalf manufacturers of the crib bumper. They ultimately reviewed and determined that the crib bumpers were not a significant factor in the overwhelming majority of those deaths, if not all of them, that the biggest concern was the misuse of the pads, that putting co-sleeping with children, and it was ultimately loose bedding that was most likely the contributing factor. Other ones were respiratory issues. And my point is that 2007 article by Thack and Harris was based upon more or less a Google search, not the actual files from the Consumer Product Safety Commission. So once they saw that, they wanted to do their own evaluation, and their health science staff indicated that it's essentially it was loose bedding, not so much the pads. So again, I think we should collectively, colleagues, support this bill because it's certainly a very good idea. And one death is way too many. But we do need to consider the unintended consequence that as a parent, myself, my kids are a little older now, but parents are concerned that their children's legs and little arms are going to go through the slats and the bars in the crib, and they'll sustain injury in that regard. So I think the mesh is probably a much better idea, without a doubt, so long as it can be permanently affixed. But the big issue is more or less education of parents that they should not sleep twins together because of their limited strength in the infancy stage, as well as other loose bedding. So again, I do appreciate the sponsor's time, and this is a wonderful idea in many regards. But I think if this doesn't get signed into law this year, or even if it does, that we should consider ultimately a global view of what would be best for our children, not just banning a particular product, because that may not solve the problem ultimately. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, sir. Read the last section.
This act shall take effect on the 60th day.
Clerk will record the vote. Are there any other votes? Announce the results.
Ayes 93, noes 5.
The bill is passed.
Assembly 86. Assembly 8630A, Rules Report 285, Ms. Gunther, an act to amend the general business law.
An explanation is requested, Ms. Gunther.
Many companies use early termination fees to ensure a customer continues use of a service through the contract length. There have been instances where these companies have charged early termination fees to accounts canceled prior to expiration of the contract due to the customer's death. This legislation would prohibit this unseemly demonstration of corporate greed.
Ms. Corwin,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the sponsor yield?
Yes.
will you yield? Sponsor
Yes.
yield.
Yes.
Thank you, Aileen. You and I had a conversation a couple days ago regarding this bill, and I appreciate that opportunity. I'm trying to understand the problem that you had in that particular situation. Was it that you were getting charged a fee, or is it that they didn't think you should be able to cancel the contract because they didn't have
So
proof that
my
I'm sorry,
mother-
if I
my-
could just finish for a second.
Okay.
Or if they didn't have proof that the person no longer, I mean, that it was your mother who passed away and that she was no longer, obviously in need of a cell phone contract.
Right. So we had enough death certificates to share them. My sister called and told the company that my mother had expired. My mother paid every bill on time the day the bill came in, and explained to her that we wanted to terminate it now. We had death certificates, and she told my sister that she couldn't terminate it, that we had to go through the contract. So my sister said, well, that's ridiculous because my mother has died. And she said, well, we are going to put your mother on a bad credit list. I kid you not. So at that point, my sister said, well, we had everything they needed, and that's the response that we got from this very large corporation.
Okay. Only because I went through a similar situation many years ago when my mother passed away.
And also, death certificate was available.
Okay, and they knew that because when I went through this with utility companies, she passed away before there were cell phones. That if you provided a death certificate, that you were able to discontinue service and basically take care of everything. That's why I'm just wondering if this is something that's peculiar just to the cell phone companies because they have these longer-term contracts, or if this is something that's happening to the utilities as well, because I see that the bill includes all of them. It includes telephone, cell phone, internet, energy, water service contracts.
Yeah, and I think when you lose a loved one, you're very vulnerable at that time. And a lot of times, like my sister thought twice because she could have written the check, but she thought twice and she said, well, this is ridiculous, but I bet you a lot of people pay that bill.
As I can imagine, yes. Like you said, they don't want to have a long-term problem going back and forth. Again, I would just say that perhaps it would be worthwhile for us to take a closer look at their policies and see if maybe this is something that was just unique to that situation. Because like I said, I do know that with the utility companies, water and so on, that if you provide the death certificate, it's very hard for them to make the case, especially in court, that you're not paying your bill if there's proof that the individual's passed away.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Montesano.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the bill, I just want to thank the sponsor for this bill. I just heard a little bit of the conversation that went on, and in my practice, I do a lot of estate work, and most recently, I'm handling estate. Individual dies. He had a business. He had several phones, so we had to cancel the service, and we were met with the same situation. Well, the contracts are being terminated earlier, but the best letter I got was from the auto leasing company, whose name I won't mention, and they said that based on so-and-so's voluntary early termination of his lease, we're imposing an early termination fee. And I just had to sit there and look at the letter for a minute, and of course, my temper got up, and I had to notify it. What's voluntary about somebody dying at an early age, but they They find the loophole because they put it in these contracts and they put it in the lease, and now they put a claim against the estate. So then you have to negotiate with them to back some of these fees out. So when a person dies, it should terminate whatever contracts they have, and the estate should not have to be responsible for it. So I applaud the piece of legislation. I will gladly support it, and I ask my colleagues to do the same. Thank you.
Read the last section.
This act shall take effect immediately.
Clerk will record the vote. Are there any other votes? Announce the results.
Ayes 108, noes 0.
The bill is passed.
Assembly 10,468, Rules Report 109. Mr. Scartatos, an act to amend the Transportation Corporation's law.
An explanation is requested, Mr. Scartatos.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill will basically ensure that towns have a voice in the construction and siting of petroleum pipelines that may traverse through their jurisdiction. So basically, it would give the same authority as what is currently enjoyed by cities as well as villages to basically ask questions, debate, and vote on a legislation such as this that pipelines may request. So what we're doing is just changing Section 87 of the Transportation Corporation Law that would allow towns rather to get the same authority as cities and villages.
Ms. Corwin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the sponsor yield?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Scartatos. I know this is a very important issue for your district. There's been a lot of discussion about a certain pipeline that's supposed to be going through there. My only question really has to do with the timing of the vote. You're proposing that a vote or a resolution by a town board would be required to be able to enable or prevent construction of a pipeline. Is there anything in the bill that specifies when in the process that vote would have to happen? And the reason I ask is just because right now pipeline construction has to go through the SECRA process, which is a state process. And so the concern that's been raised is the developer or contractor could go through the SECRA process, which involves a certain amount of time and money, and then end up getting voted down by a town board resolution. Is there anything in the bill that would allow that vote or require that vote to happen before they go through the SECRA process?
No.
Okay, so basically it's potentially possible that they could have, several tens of thousands of dollars worth of work done and then end up having it get voted down.
Well, if I was to construct something or do something, I get the proper permissions before I do anything, before I invest anything. So I think it's incumbent upon them to make sure they do their homework to ensure that they have all the permits and all the necessary paperwork in order before they proceed with any construction. I mean, we are talking about a major infrastructure construction, so a major investment is going to be made. Therefore, I would make sure that I have all my ducks in order.
Sure, certainly. That would make a lot of sense. You're right. I know up in my district, I'm actually dealing with a wind farm that would be going up, which is Article 10. That isn't under the SECRA process anymore. And some of the complaints we've been getting is how that the town board doesn't have any say in whether or not a wind farm can be put in their backyards. And so it's created quite a stir up my way. But one of the things that's come out of the whole process has been the fact that that the people want to know what's going on at certain steps along the way, but they don't really know until they go through the whole environmental part of the process. And so I guess that's the hard part here, is that we're going to be asking the people of the town or the board to be voting on something before they actually have a plan or a project to look at.
Well, I would suggest to you that currently they're required to get a permission from cities as well as villages. So what we're doing is just we're adding the towns to cities and villages. So there's no difference, really.